What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. So, thought I would continue with this series as far as with shooting guards. And number four, I got Dwyane Wade. Okay, so Dwyane Wade, to me, is one of the best shooting guards ever. No matter how much revisionist history goes on where certain players are being diminished to prop up another one, those of us who watch Dwyane Wade know that he was, for a minute, arguably, arguably now, the best shooting guard in the league, depending on how you looked at it. You know, if you were saying like uh, for everything that he did, he had a case. I think it was still Kobe in 2008, 2009, 2010, but Wade had a case. You know, um, this is the thing about Wade. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, and he got the most out of his talent, and he was never afraid of the big moment. You know, that's one guy you could never say was afraid when the chips were on the line to take the game winning shot. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't a great shooter, uh, but he uh, was the type of guy that would take that shot in a big moment. And it's another thing too. People forget about how much of an all-around game he had. He wasn't just a guy that was a scorer. For some reason, people just remember him as being a scorer, when in reality, Wade was a guy that could score the basketball. Initially, before he started breaking down, this is a guy that they call Flash. He was very quick. He was very explosive. He would perennially lead the NBA in free throw attempts. He was fearless. He kind of had that Allen Iverson thing where, he was a bit undersized at position, but his athleticism made up for that. And he got knocked on his ass. He would get back up and go to the cup again. He was also an underrated passer and rebounder. He in his best years, he would average six over 7 assists per game, but that's forgotten over time. And remember, this was in the 2000s when the pace of game was slower. He would average 5 to 6 plus rebounds a game. Remember, he was only 6'4", and he is statistically probably the greatest shot blocking shooting guard that we've ever seen. He's number one all time. He passed Michael Jordan in most blocks for a shooting guard. That's another aspect of his game that gets forgotten. How Wade was effective on the defensive end, especially during his prime. So yes, Dwyane Wade is very underrated today, and a lot of us know why. Okay, um, but things weren't always so rosy for Dwyane Wade. He started off in a rather precarious situation, a bad luck situation. Starting off, you want to talk about bad luck, um, the hospital made a mistake on his first name. He's always had that peculiar spelling with his name. Most people whose names are Dwayne is usually Dway or something to that effect. But the hospital screwed that up. And he had that famous Dwyane spelling. But his family, his parents chose to keep that misspelling. Um, but his parents didn't apparently choose to keep their marriage, and they separated when Wade was still an infant. And for the rest of his formative years, he either lived with his father or his mother, or when his sister became old enough, the sister. His mother, I believe, had substance abuse and some level of criminal activity going on with her. So she lost custody of Dwyane, and then the sister, she had substance abuse issues. So Wade did not come from the same stable atmosphere that a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant or um, a Magic Johnson came from, or Grant Hill. He didn't come from that type of environment. Um, that's why a lot of people are kind of shocked by the way Dwyane has turned out lately. Don't want to get into that. It's a video of me giving him praise, so I don't want to get into that, but you know what I'm saying. Um, his sister has been drug free for many, many years now. She was inspired by Dwyane Wade's success in his basketball career, and apparently she's been drug free for quite some time. Um, but Wade, as a kid, was initially a two sport guy. We've seen this before with athletes I've mentioned. He was into football and basketball. He idolized Michael Jordan as a kid, but his height was a detriment at first. But when he had a growth spurt in high school, late in high school, that's when he began to focus more on basketball, and that proved to be the right decision. Um, in college, Wade went to Marquette in Milwaukee, and while I always thought that he was a really good player in Marquette, I didn't think that he was going to be the player that he became. He was good, but he didn't, to me, look all that explosive in college. I wouldn't put him at the time, at least, I wouldn't have put him on the same level as LeBron James or Carmelo Anthony, at the time. But man, we were wrong. We were wrong about him when he went when he was drafted by the Miami Heat. At the time, the Miami Heat were in a rebuilding phase. Um, this is after the Alonzo Mourning, Tim Hardaway era, where they got all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals in 1997. Um, but the rebuilding process wouldn't take very long. They started off terrible that year, but they got their shit together in 2003, 2004, and they finished about 500. Okay, he averaged 16 points a game his rookie year. Now, at that time, he was contending with guys like LeBron James or Carmelo Anthony as far as rookie of the year, but still, he had a very good rookie year. His next year, the Miami Heat had acquired Shaquille O'Neal. And at that time, Shaq was beginning to slip a little bit as the premier center in the league, but he still was the best center and still was one of the most dominant players in the league, if not still the most dominant player in the league. And you saw a incredible improvement in their record. I think they won like 59 or 60 games that year, and they had the best record in the Eastern Conference. And they made it all the way, I think they made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they lost to the Detroit Pistons, who eventually would lose in seven to the San Antonio Spurs in that finals. But it was the next year that Wade finally really truly stepped up and became uh, Flash. That year, I think he averaged something like 27 points, something like 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals. Um, and Miami had their famous run to the NBA Finals. That year, they played the Dallas Mavericks, and it looked like in Game 3, after they dropped the first two games, they were down double digits going into the third quarter, and it looked like Dallas might have been on their way toward a sweep or a gentleman's sweep with like 4-1 or something like that, right? Um, but Wade had other plans. Wade had other plans where he refused. This is a guy. If you watch that series, remember watching that series. If you talk about the free throws and gifts and all this crap, at the end of the day, if you watch Dwyane Wade in that series, in particular, those last 4 games where he averaged nearly 40 points a game, This is a guy that refused to lose. Okay, and it wasn't like some of these games were blowouts. I mean, some of these games could have went to Dallas, and that could have been the ball game for the Miami Heat. But ultimately, Dwyane Wade proved too much. Now, I think he averaged something like 33 points per game for the series, but the last 4 games, I think he averaged something like 40 points. He was efficient. I mean, he was nailing jumpers from all over the court. He was doing it from the mid range. He was taking it to the cup. He was unstoppable. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, he did shoot a lot of free throws, but at the end of the day, he still had to make them motherfuckers, right? And they came back and won 4 games to 2. And that was the Miami Heat's first championship. And then that's when Dwyane Wade officially became a superstar. And he played at a high level for, many, many years. The style of basketball that he played, though, you kind of knew that his peak was going to be shorter. Allen Iverson is an aberration. Allen Iverson played at a high level for more than a decade. Wade started breaking down probably by around the age of 30, whereas AI kind of first saw it around age 33 or so, 34. Um, but even though that team eventually began to break up after their championship run, Wade was a mainstay, well respected in the league, and was one of the best players and most dominant players, period. And like I said before, he was known for being a force on the offensive and defensive end. And you saw this championship spirit in him. I remember it was in 2010. I still remember that series. They played the Boston Celtics, who was one of the best teams in the league. The same year they went to the finals and played the Lakers again. And I can't remember the spread of that series anymore. It might have been 4-1 or something in the first round. But there was one game where Wade refused to lose. Like I guess he basically said, "Look, we might not have enough firepower to beat this Boston team, but I'd be fucking damn if we'll get swept by this team." I remember a game where he's not known for a 3 point. He's not known as a 3 point shooter, but he was nailing threes. I remember he was looking at his hand and shit. I think he scored like 46, almost 50 points that game. And I was thinking to myself, man, if this guy just had some fucking help, man, you know, Miami would be a problem. I remember saying that to my buddy, man. I think we were at Quiznos or some shit. And I was watching that game. I was like, man, if he just had some fucking help, man, this dude is a beast. And that proved to be a rather prescient observation because help was on the way. The big three started the trend of the big three that we see today. Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes I think it's a bad thing for the NBA because it does take away from parity. But LeBron James made his decision. He announced that he was going to Miami. And along for the ride, initially it was speculated to be Carmelo, but it ended up being Chris Bosh. And while the Heatles, as they were called, were successful in many ways, they went to 4 consecutive NBA finals. They didn't win as many titles as I thought they would. And I thought they would stay together a little longer. They did win 2 championships. 2011 proved to be disappointing. Although they did make it to the finals in their first year together, um, because LeBron is a player that needs to have the ball in his hands to be effective. Um, plus some other chemistry issues. They still trying to figure out how to work together. Ultimately, Dallas won that series. But the next year, when Wade said, "You know what, man, for this thing to work, LeBron has to have the ball in his hands. He's not the type of guy that can play off the ball and be effective. He needs the ball in his hands. I'll learn. I will play off. I can do that. Bosh needs to go for spacing reasons. Bosh needs to go out and be more of a jump shooter. Okay, he didn't. He struggled in that role initially, um, but eventually it worked out to the tune of repeat championships in 2012 and 2013, and a whole pack of fucking bandwagon fans. I remember that era. You guys remember it. 2014, however, by that time, LeBron was at the peak of his powers at that time, but Wade was now beginning to diminish a bit as a player, and you could kind of tell that, um, you know, that team's run might be coming to an end. LeBron James left, go back to Cleveland, and Wade stayed. What was it? Maybe two more seasons. Memory's a little bit fuzzy now. I think he played a couple more seasons in Miami, and then Wade became sort of like a journeyman. I don't want to say role player, but journeyman slash. Um, what's the term I want to use? He was still an effective player, but he's becoming a little bit more of a journeyman and a an elder statesman of the league, and more of a what I'm looking for, a guide. Um, it's not the right word I'm looking for. A tutor, I guess I'll say, to younger players. He went to the Chicago Bulls. They had some success that year. Um, you know, had a stint with Cleveland. I'm not gonna. I could bash LeBron a little bit with that one. I don't think LeBron handled that situation very well. Um, or whatever. Um, but ultimately, he went back to Miami the 2018-19 season for one last season. There was also last season for Dirk Nowitzki, and the NBA gave him a grand send off. You know, and that was Wade's career. You know, Wade has remained, a fixture in the NBA, whether it's with guest hosting at times or attending All Star events or whatever. And some speculation into his personal life has put him in the news from time to time, for better or for worse. But this is the thing about Dwyane Wade for his career, man. Okay, when you look at his accomplishments, he was a three-time NBA champion. He was the 2006 NBA Finals MVP. He was the 2010 All Star Game MVP. He was a 13-time All Star, twice All NBA First Team, three time, three times, All NBA Second Team, three times All NBA Third Team. He was on the All Defensive Second Team three times. He was the 2008-2009 scoring champion. I think he averaged 30.2 points per game that year. And I believe that's the highest scoring average for any player, yeah, I believe so, in the history of the Miami Heat. He's the Miami Heat's all time leading scorer, long since past Alonzo Mourning. He was on the 2003-2004 All Rookie First Team. His number three is retired by the Miami Heat. He was a consensus first team All American in 2003. His number three is retired by the Marquette Golden Eagles. Wade averaged 22 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 5.4 assists per game. As I said, he was a pretty good rebounder for his position, and he was not a selfish player. He could pass the rock and he could score. He was an all around player, and he was a guy that played on both ends of the court. He wasn't a great shooter, but he was efficient. For a guy that was 6'4" and maybe about 195 to 200 pounds, he was a solid big guy. Actually, he got 220 pounds at his heaviest. So he was a solid guy. I think when he first came to the league, he was 195 though. But for a player that's that big and stocky, he was, like I said, in his prime, very fast. Um, there were some. Look, I'm going to mention this. There were allegations that Wade used PEDs. And that's why I mentioned the thing about him not being didn't appear not as explosive in Marquette. Look, it's never been definitively proven. Uh, there's been some speculation about him using HGH, and that he had to have his jaw filed down, some surgery. I did notice from looking at pictures of him when he was in Marquette and later on, his jaw did get bigger. Look, I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we can only speculate with certain shit. If it's not hard evidence, then I can't really go on that. But like I was saying, he's not a wasn't a great shooter. He only shot 29% from three, but he did shoot 48% from the floor, and he had one, two, three, three seasons where he shot 50%. 2011, 2013, 2014. In 2014, he shot 54.5% from the floor, which is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? Phenomenal for a shooting guard. So that's Dwyane Wade, man. He's the future Hall of Famer. Um, I think he's a fine gentleman. You know what I'm saying? I have some questions about certain aspects of his life, but it is what it is, man. Tell me what you guys think.